This gentleman, he's worked with former presidents as a physician, former President Clinton, George Bush, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, and many others. He was an attorney. He worked with multi-billionaires across the country, helping them with their acute health care. Now he's gone on, after being an emergency room physician, to be, in my opinion, one of the world's top physicians committed to biological health optimization.
What is glaringly different about today is the fact that ancestrally we had a drive naturally to optimize and to be as healthy as possible. It was patently obvious to every human being that the healthier you are, the longer you live and the better you live.
First place that you can control. It costs no money. It requires a little bit of discipline, and it requires just a little bit of insight, but it's really just the discipline that you build around this. To go create a set of abs instantly puts you in the 0.0001% of the population. Like right there, you can already start to separate it.
We are thrilled to introduce you today to Dr. Sean O'Mara. This gentleman, he's worked with former presidents as a physician, former President Clinton, George Bush, Condoleezza Rice, Colin Powell, and many others. He has a fascinating career. He was an attorney. For a series of years, he worked with multi-billionaires across the country, helping them with their acute health care. And now he's gone on, after being an emergency room physician, to be, in my opinion, one of the world's top physicians committed to biological health optimization. I cannot wait for you to meet him. He's a friend of mine. I'm one of his clients, and his whole mission in life is health optimization. He actually once said to me on a phone call, "Matt, there isn't a physician on the planet more committed to optimization than I am." And when you hear stuff like that, it makes you pause. So Dr. Sean, welcome. Love you. Profoundly grateful for your everything you're contributing to the world regarding your research on visceral fat. There's so many places we can go in this interview. Also, my co-host, Eric, is super committed to his own health and well-being. So I know we're just going to spark off and go all over the place. To kick it off, let me just kick this off because you embody this. Here's my first question. I was reading a dialogue Socrates had centuries ago. And one thing I admire about Dr. Sean, for you viewers out there, he's 60 years old. And if you look at pictures of him a decade ago, you look at his face, his physicality, he's way more optimized. He's way healthier. He'll get into that. And that is just remarkable, to optimize to the degree that Dr. Sean is over time. So I'll just go philosophical to start, and then we'll see where this goes. So there's this dialogue Socrates had with one of his students, Epigenes, and this is in Xenophon wrote about this if you're into philosophy. In any case, Socrates walks up to this young man, and he says, "Epigenes, you look as if you need exercise." And I love that question. He just says this to him, and you could picture all the 30-year-old men in our country with fat bellies and sarcopenia, no muscle. And so Socrates looks at him and he says, "You look as if you need exercise." So his excuse is, "Well, I'm not an athlete." And then Socrates gives him this huge discourse on why we're to take really good care of our physical health. And he says this, and I'll just tee this up for you, Dr. Sean. Go where you want with it. He says, "Besides, it is a disgrace to grow old through sheer carelessness before seeing what manner of man you may become by developing your bodily strength and beauty to their highest limit. But you cannot see that if you are careless, for it will not come of its own accord." And man, if I'm not going to say you're Socrates, Dr. Sean, but boy, I don't know anyone who's developing his bodily well-being and strength to their highest limit like you are. Welcome to the show. And
welcome, buddy. How'd you find it?
Well, thank you. What a beautiful quote and a beautiful discourse. And, what I'd comment on is the importance of health to our species. And it's basically understood that species need to be as healthy as possible to contribute to the planet and part of our contribution to, the whole ecosystem and biology. But what is glaringly different about today, and probably even different than the days of Socrates, is the fact that ancestrally we had a drive naturally always within us to optimize and to be as healthy as possible. And so the need to have that kind of a discourse really did not exist because it was patently obvious to every human being that the healthier you are, the longer you live and the better you live. And if you're not optimally healthy, you get eliminated from the gene pool, which is kind of a sophisticated way of saying you're just going to get killed. And so that force of nature from an anthropological standpoint is called selection pressure. And anthropologists were aware of it, and it's what drove every man, woman, and child to be as healthy, optimally healthy as they possibly could be, because otherwise they would be killed, they would become prey, they were that vulnerable, and their quality of life was so patently obvious to them. Today, everybody gets to live to roughly just about 78 years of age, no matter what kind of decisions you make, basically, in large part. But in the past, that wasn't the case. So I like to bring awareness to that fact. And it's still true today, even though we don't talk about it, we may not be aware of it. The more optimally healthy you are, the longer you're going to live and the better your quality of life. And for the most part, that's completely lost on modern day humans.
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
What you just said reminds me of how you define health, which is appearance and performance. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So I've looked at different metrics for health, and everybody has kind of a different one, but most physicians sum up health based on your lipid profile, your cholesterol panel. But what I think is most germane and most relevant and most important to human beings is how they look and how they perform. And I think for the most part, people get the performance because, how you perform goes to your quality of life. But the reason why I include in my definition of health, how you look, is because of the mission that we all have as human beings to be influencers. We are meant to share our lives with other people. And to the extent that we have optimized our appearance, we become better influencers. And so it's not enough to be like the greatest chess player of all times, or the greatest accountant, or greatest attorney, or the greatest basketball player. You also have to look good if you want to fulfill completely your role of being an influencer. So the highest apex performers are those who perform the best and also look the best, so that they can influence other people to perform well and to live maximally. So that's why I include both how you look and how you perform for my definition of health.
Yeah. There's certain things money can't buy. And you're right. There's a lot of people that achieve success financially or in their field or their craft. But when you break it all down, you might as well be fucking poor if your body is failing you because you've not taken care of it. So one of the things we always focus on is we make sure all domains of life we put our hearts and souls into, and we do not skip health. Obviously, it's a huge pillar that's overlooked, and it's almost like society is kind of forced it that direction in a sense. I mean, you when you really start looking under the hood, that's where I think it's really interesting. It's sort of the why of how we got here. But it's almost like there's wolves in sheep's clothing everywhere. There's so many smoking mirrors when it comes to health in general. I hope we end up getting there, because I'd love to hear your perspective on that. But this socially acceptable, it's okay to be fat. I'll just say it how it's coming to my mind, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but that just seems like that is a disservice to your children. That's a disservice to society. It's a disservice to your greatest self. I don't know. You guys feel that?
Oh,
Yeah, no,
absolutely.
I
You know
feel
what I
that,
mean?
and I can respond to that. I think, biologically, our species, humans, um, assign a high degree of importance about appearance. Whether you want to pretend or think otherwise, or socialize, or politicize some other way, it comes down to you look at another human being and you're trying to determine, are they able to help me live better? Because biologically, our wiring is we have to hunt for food to get food, and we look to other people for assistance with being able to do that. And if you're morbidly obese, or if you are morbidly filled with disease, then your capacity to be able to evoke and project that you can be relevant, that you can be helpful, that you can assist other people, that's going to be compromised.
Sure.
And so a good example of this is I'm 60 years of age. Matt, you're a little closer to my age than Eric is. But when I grew up, we respected the elderly and we would go and visit them in nursing homes. And today it is happening at a declining frequency. Younger generations are not paying attention to the older generations, the elderly. And my explanation for this is biology. It's not mores that are changing. It's our species is becoming more diseased. And so the elderly today have more disease than at any point in the history of our species.
Damn.
And so as a consequence of that, their faces, their bodies project to the younger generation, pay no attention to me because I can't help you live well. It's an imperative. It's really critical that if you're listening to my voice, that you understand your responsibility to transfer knowledge to the younger people and be that constant, omnipresent influencer to our species to maximize everyone's quality of life, to be able to help other people. And if you have a face and a body and that projects a poor appearance and you cannot perform well, you cannot fulfill your biological obligation and your mission as a human being. So we really need to get ourselves more healthy. And if we're able to do that, I think you'll find younger generations will start following you and paying more attention to you.
Yeah. Me and Matt talk about this a lot, how to be a separator in life. I mean, that's always the goal, especially when you're in this personal development space. You're always trying to separate from the herd. There was a stat I came across. I don't know how true it is, but I saw it. And I can't cite the study, but or the reference to where it came from. But it said something to the effect: there's 22 million millionaires in America out of just under 400 million, and there's only 3 million Americans with a visible set of abs. Now, if you're just sitting here and you have big dreams and you don't know where to start or what to do, you're young, you're old, doesn't matter. Wherever you're at, if you have a big lofty goal and you're trying to figure out how to be a separator, seems to me it's a no-brainer. The first place that you can control that costs no money, it requires a little bit of discipline and it requires just a little bit of insight, but it's really just the discipline that you build around this. To go create a set of abs instantly puts you in the 0.0001% of the population. Like right there, you can already start to separate. It's funny how I've always linked health to success. I actually connect the two. I connect endorphins to financial gain. I always have and I always will. And it's become, for me, it was a bedrock for all my greatest ideas, all my greatest thoughts, all my greatest energies. They happen in that flow state. And that's where all my courage comes from and my confidence. And I would take those ideas to the marketplace and I'd make the hard phone call. So I love talking about the connection between health and money, because a lot of people come near us hoping that they're going to get rich. And I'm like, fuck talking about money. Like, let's talk about health first and foremost, because 9 out of 10 people that show up, you can see it in their face. They are lacking the discipline necessary, to do what they claim they want to do in life. But the best place to start is health. So I think the best thing you can do in society is to not only become rich and wealthy so you can give it back, but to be a steward of all your greatest assets. And that would include like the best body that you can have. So, I know we're going to get there, but there's so many questions that are going to come up. I wish we could poll the audience of where do you start?
Yeah, let's go with abs and
where do you start?
That big image behind your head. Eric teed it up perfectly. visible abs. Now, what's interesting about Sean's research, and dive into this, Dr. Sean, is health may not be as it appears. You might have a decent belly, but underneath there's something lurking. So tell us about visceral fat and why this is probably, I think, one of the greatest discoveries in modern medicine that no one understands.
Yeah. So here's an image behind me of an abdomen. So this is a slice of an abdomen at the level of the belly button. So that's the belly button right in the center there. Why it's dark, you can see it as air. And the yellow on the outside of that image is subcutaneous fat. So that's just fat underneath the skin. But the pinkish reddish color substance inside the abdomen is what's called visceral fat, which is a type of fat that I also like to call it invisible obesity, because it's obesity that is invisible. You don't know about it unless you get a CT or an MRI scan to be able to see it. And so visceral fat is something that most people have no idea how much of that they have. And they also have a very limited understanding of how bad it is. And it's bad because it's highly inflammatory. It's the first form of disease that afflicts humans. Even in their childhood, we begin to accumulate this disease process, and it contributes to our demise and our poor quality living and disease because of the inflammatory molecules it's constantly spewing out. So it's like, you can think of it as a furnace that's burning caustic soot that goes throughout your body, causing all manner of harm, disease, and problems. So nothing in all of my years of medicine will improve a human being more than eliminating visceral fat from inside their body. Wow. So it's the most important thing for people to be aware of when it comes to enlightenment about their health and their quality of living. If you understand that your quality of living is made most relevant and pertains most directly to the level of health you have, then you must, by necessity, be aware of visceral fat and begin to eliminate it. So in this image here, there's a lot of visceral fat and very little subcutaneous fat. And this person is what's called skinny fat, or we call them also toffies. Thin outside, so they're thin, and the yellow is they're very thin with their subcutaneous fat, and they're fat inside, all this red. And so these skinny fat people, when you look at them from a population standpoint, have a higher degree of mortality and risk than an outwardly obese individual. Wow. So you may be walking around lean and thin, and you're worse off than a morbidly obese person, because this amount of hidden obesity that's inside you, invisible, that's causing you all this disease. So it's really a good image to show that.
Before you ask the question, because just for clarity, so visceral fat's not connected to outward fat, or what's the best way to call it?
Yeah, describe the different forms of fat, Dr.
That's
Sean.
crazy.
Yeah, so visceral fat, and maybe I'll just pull up this image because it's a little bit better. Visceral fat compared to subcutaneous fat, the outward fat, as Eric called it, is like bricks and clouds. Bricks and clouds, completely different. Wow. So this image here on an MRI, fat shows up as white and muscle shows up as dark. So these are the muscles on the outside. These are your back muscles. And the white stuff in the middle is visceral fat, and we paint it red up here so that people are educated. So if you're watching us today, now you can see that visceral fat is painted red. The subcutaneous fat is painted yellow. The yellow stuff actually is beneficial. And you probably have already heard that subcutaneous fat has some protective benefit to you as an individual. You don't want to have too low of body fat percentage. And so the subcutaneous fat is actually made of two compartments. One is superficial subcutaneous fat, and the other is deep subcutaneous fat. And the superficial produces a molecule called adiponectin. And you can Google it, it's just like it sounds, adiponectin. And you'll find out that it actually suppresses and reduces cardiovascular disease, and suppresses inflammation, fatty liver disease, so fat within the liver, and it's associated inverse relationship to visceral fat. So the more adiponectin you have, the less visceral fat. But
Is that brown
visceral
fat?
is just the opposite, causes disease, causes through its release of these inflammatory molecules like interleukin-6, cytokines, adipokines, tumor necrosis factor, and a whole slew of other inflammatory substances that come from visceral fat and cause the things that kill, especially the big killers, heart attacks and strokes, cancer, and neurodegenerative conditions. So completely different perspective. Not all fat is the same.
Sure.
Some fat is deadly and very dangerous. Visceral fat and deep subcutaneous fat, and then muscle fat. These white streaks that you see in that dark tissue there is fat within your muscle. It's called human marbling. And just recently, in the past few months, AI found out that it doubles your risk for cardiovascular disease mortality. It's twice the risk factor of being obese.
Damn.
The specific, that small type of fat doubles your mortality compared to just being morbidly obese, being really obese. So there's bad fat and there's good fat, and an awareness and understanding of that helps a human make informed decisions on how to live and how to optimize their health. And it's the reason why most people struggle with obesity and health. They don't know what to do, and the system is not incentivized to help you get healthy. The system is incentivized to actually allow you to propagate more disease so that they can profit from it. So be grateful for Eric and Matt putting on this podcast today and allowing this content and this really important information to get out there, because it's just not going to be released through conventional channels.
Yeah.
Your remarks, you've remarked before that if you were just to Google visceral fat, and any disease, you'll be astonished at the research in a compartmentalized manner that's out there. In our conversations just recently, Dr. Sean, you were commenting on a particular molecule that exacerbates cancer. And we could even use maybe that as an example as a question. But I would just encourage the listeners, take visceral fat, Google the prostate, diabetes. It's just low hormonal impacts. It's just on and on. Yet it's not something that's being talked about
in the media. Yeah.
Yeah, you Google whatever problem you have. If you suffer from arthritis, you suffer from migraines, you suffer from whatever condition, thousands of conditions. Just Google it, visceral fat, and see the ubiquitous role that visceral fat plays in this. I recently had a discussion with this with somebody who did that because they were struggling with abdominal aortic aneurysm. And that's where your aorta is enlarging until the point that it ruptures and you die. So when it gets so large, then you need to have surgery. But the surgery is life-threatening. So they won't do the surgery until your life is so at risk that they might as well do it to try to save it. Damn. Well, he did that. He put in abdominal aortic aneurysm. And guess what he found out? Visceral fat causes it. Then he got really mad because his doctor never told him about it.
Yeah.
And your doctor's not telling you about the role and the contribution visceral fat is having in your disease process.
Yeah.
So literally, this is kept from physicians because it's not taught in medical school.
Yeah.
It is not. I did not learn about this until I left medical school after about 15 years of practicing medicine before I learned about this through another researcher. And I was appalled at the contributions that visceral fat had in all of my medical conditions. And when I eliminated my visceral fat, every one of my medical conditions went away. So my heart disease, my enlarged prostate, where I was getting up 5 times a night to pee, my erectile dysfunction, my eczema, my restless leg syndrome, where I kicked my legs all night long, my obstructive sleep apnea, where I was snoring all night long, and my inflammatory joint disease, my chronic back pain, all esophageal, Barrett's esophagus, where I had precancerous lesions from severe heartburn that afflicted my esophagus. All of it reversed when I get rid of my visceral fat. All the inflammation was eliminated, and so my body could get beyond the on its mission of just restoring health and allow myself to recover. But you cannot restore yourself to a healthier level that you previously were in your childhood until you get rid of that visceral fat. And I like to tell my client patients that work with me, if you want to see what you would look like healthy, look at your kids, because your kids have not yet acquired enough visceral fat to have accumulated chronic disease. And I tell children, if you want to look and see what you're going to be like when you're afflicted with disease, look at your parents, because those two windows are great examples of the absence of disease and the presence of disease. And it all turns on this visceral fat deep inside of you.
This is great. I want to establish a baseline real quick. So, because I'm just trying to think about like the average listener that's out there. So number one, you're opening the door to guys like Colton over here, who's a little skinny dude. And I'm sure you have no visceral fat, bro. Your skin is shining. That's our producer over here. But you open the door to the reality that, like, hey, if I feel like I'm skinny and look decent on the outside, number one, like that may not necessarily be true. Okay, so that's this first thought. Second thought is, which is kind of the question that I'm leading up to. It's like, okay, so I may be fat, but there's also a chance that I have less visceral fat as a big fat guy than Colton over here, who weighs 100 pounds less. I mean, where is it genetics that it starts to feed the visceral fat direction? Because how, in my mind, I want to just get a little bit clear in this, because I'm sure if I'm thinking about it, maybe consumers in the marketplace are thinking about this too.
That's perfect.
If I'm fat here, is there a chance that I'm actually pretty healthy? Or are those two things not necessarily true? Like if you're fat out here, you're probably terrible at visceral fat, but you're also opening the door that if you're skinny, you also could be unhealthy still viscerally. So maybe draw the line at this so there's a baseline to understand like where visceral fat comes from and how it affects people. Because
that's a great question, Eric. So I get it a lot. What role does genetics play? In other words, how much of my visceral fat may be simply coming through genetic linkage? And the answer to that is pretty much well settled, that not much. That by and large, the vast majority, upwards around 95% or plus, of your visceral fat is determined by literally the decisions you make every single day for the rest of your life. How you've lived your life has the largest contribution to whether you have this disease inside of you or not. And so an example I think I like to tell patients and people when I do a podcast is, what does a good abdomen look like and a bad one? So a good abdomen is mostly dark, mostly muscle. Most men and women want to have less fat and more muscle, not an excessive amount in the case of women, and probably even a lot of men don't want to be too muscle bound, but you want an optimal amount. And that's why I like the MRI, because you can really get down to how much of your body is fat and how much is muscle. So this is a friend of mine, Gabe, in the Army National Guard with me. Gabe has a lot of muscles and very little white. So he has very little visceral fat, and he has this oval shape. If you remember, Eric and Colton, I don't know how Colton is, but when you were about 31. 16, and I think Matt would agree, you had this nice flat abdomen. It was kind of an oval-shaped, abdomen. And as you age, you accumulate visceral fat, then you get a protruding abdomen like this guy here. Now, both of these guys are the same age, but this guy here is mostly white and very little dark. And so the more visceral fat you have, the more loss of muscle you get. So obesity contributes, particularly visceral adiposity, visceral fat, with atrophy of your muscles. So this poor person has very small muscles. They're little tiny dark muscles. And Gabe has big muscles. So the other things that contribute to it besides in particular lifestyle is the food you eat, processed foods, especially carbohydrates, processed carbohydrates, and then alcohol, poor sleep. If you're not sleeping, it will contribute to the production of accumulation of visceral fat. And then stress. Stress is a huge player in visceral fat and is a killer in society, and not enough attention is made about an awareness of stress and how it contributes to not only visceral adiposity, but ultimately and consequentially to disease, and ultimately it's killing people.
I'll chime in on Eric's question and that remark on stress. So Eric was saying, so it's not to say an obese person is healthy, but say someone with a lot of sub-Q fat and not as much visceral fat, whereas someone who's very little sub-Q fat, they're thin on the outside, but they're fat on the inside with visceral fat. As a client of Dr. Sean's, I see this in his client group all over the place. It's full of what he calls alphas, and many of them are thin on the outside, fat on the inside. They have taken on high stress. Some of them, I mean, there's, billionaires in the group. There's high level people.
Sure.
But out of love for their family, think of the person going to CrossFit 7 days a week. I remember Dr. Sean, I got to interview one of your clients, a top-rated pilot for Delta Airlines, and when he saw you, he lifted up his shirt in his early 60s with pride, showing you his flat stomach. And here was a man who was willing to work hard for his family, hard driving, but the information out there as to what actually promotes health is so in error. He's drinking, if I recall, he ate processed foods.
Yep.
And he was a wreck.
On the MRI, it showed
on the
that he was
MRI
a wreck.
and in health. If you ask him, he had sleep apnea, he had swollen ankles.
Symptoms.
Yeah, symptoms.
Symptomatic, yeah.
All his symptoms.
Yep.
I interviewed him. His name's Cameron. You can find it on YouTube. But all his symptoms went away. So his health incredibly optimized.
Once he got on Dr. Sean's program?
Yeah, once he got on Dr. Sean's protocol.
Can't wait to
But
hear
the
it.
thing about it is,
You might have a new customer.
yeah, right. Yeah,
I'm always trying to up my game.
yeah.
So.
So everything optimizes. But that really struck me because it was like, man, I'm doing the best I can. But the information, like Eric said out there, it's so profit driven. You don't know what's smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, I have doctors that live all around me, and it's clear they're there to treat symptoms. They're not there to prevent much. Like,
Yeah.
it's just not part of the
Do
game
they look
plan.
healthy?
Yeah, that's another good question.
It's a sad thing. If you follow doctors, they die of the same things that their patients are dying of. They themselves don't have the knowledge how to live appropriately because it's not shared with them and taught to them in medical school. What's taught to us is how to prescribe medications, to do surgical procedures, medical procedures, but not how to live and optimize our body, our health, and our quality of life. So it really is very much the case for a lot of people that they perceive themselves as being healthy, but they have inwardly inside of them all this visceral fat. This is a big example. This guy who would pinch himself all the time, and he could just pinch a little, pinch an inch, and he thought he was really healthy. But when he got scanned, he literally, when I showed him inside his body, he passed out, went unconscious, fell down, hit the floor.
Damn.
Because he was overwhelmed at the awareness that he was filled with disease. And he woke up and he said, I am a fraud. And you helped me to realize that I've been living this fraudulent life, imagining myself to be healthy. And here I am filled with this disease. Yeah. And so it really is the case that you can operate under this misconception that you're healthy and you're not.
I will say, and then a question, a remark, and then Eric, you got the question.
I have a selfish
I'll just
question.
say, when I got scanned by Dr. Sean, what really hit me, and he says this all the time, you could read a number, it doesn't motivate you. But when I saw my heart and the slab of fat around my heart,
damn,
like visually just saw it,
freaking me out.
I was like, oh my God. And then, Dr. Sean, you were showing me on our appointment when you showed me brain images of some of your like Fortune 50 executive, I can't remember the story, but and literally I watched the artery in the brain open up.
That's amazing.
After optimizing.
Yeah.
But I can't overstate. When I saw that fat in my heart, it's all I needed to see.
How long ago did you do that?
I saw Dr. Sean February 5th.
It'd be cool to just for even right now do before and afters with you.
Oh, yeah.
I know I've seen you dramatically change. I can see it in your skin. I can see it in the vascularity in you. Outwardly, it's visible. And you weren't bad to begin with, to be honest. You look great.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. My selfish question I have is, because obviously I need to take the plunge and do this. it's funny that you're talking about MRIs. So, and this is a little off note from my selfish question that's coming up, but I just lost a dear friend. She was very famous and had a just huge support system around her all over the world. She was the #1 network marketer in the world. Her name was Jessie Lee. They just went to a 7,000 person business mastermind this last weekend in Salt Lake City, and they did a huge memorial thing for her on the screen. Ed Milet did a thing for her. So she's very loved. She had this battle with cancer that was on public display. She was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer at the age of 34 years old. And it was right at the peak of her actual health. She had been overweight majority of her life and had recently gone on this health journey. And right when she looked amazing. She really did. She killed it. Right at the height of that moment, I think it was Tony Robbins, if I remember correctly, that was a friend of hers that said, hey, you should go get a full body MRI. And so she took his advice. She went to doctors, and doctors tried to persuade her not to. They said, oh, it's expensive. You don't need to do it. You look great. You're fine. And she had to battle through it to get this MRI. So she gets the MRI, and sure as shit, it lights up red everywhere. And she was diagnosed with aggressive stage 4 cancer. She wasn't given not long to live. They said, if you go on chemo, 2 years. So she decided to fight this battle holistically. And sure enough, her markers were going down. The size of her lymph nodes were cut in half. She'd been seeing doctors in Europe, which had a totally different approach to cancer in general. But it was sepsis that ended up getting her. I'm sure there was some immune system linkage for the cancer, but it was kidney stones from the high dose vitamin C that had popped up out of nowhere right after she'd gotten I think it's the PET scan or something. I may get that wrong.
PET, a PET scan.
Yeah, and the numbers came back fantastic. Their oncologist in America just doesn't understand. Is blown away. He's like, I don't need to see you for 6 months. You're amazing. Go. Next day, she's hurting with kidney stones. Then she's in the hospital, and then she gets sepsis. And that is how she passed, which is just heartbreaking because she was fighting such a public battle on the world to display. But she learned a lot through the holistic process, and she would teach the world what she was learning. It was amazing how much attack she got from the medical world. A lot of the stuff she was doing in the pursuit of fighting cancer, a different route from chemo, doctors would say, don't tell anybody this. You cannot go on and say this is helping you or bringing your numbers down. They're very cautious of it because they don't want to come in and get crushed from whatever direction they're going to get crushed from. She's talking about all sorts of treatments. One of them I've been doing is the ozone. She did all kinds of crazy ozone where they would take 3/4 of her blood out, pump it back in. But all these things were actually making these markers go down. So it's just interesting. Health has so many different faces now. You're going to get information from so many different places. And she still passed. I mean, this isn't an easy topic to talk about. But it was that, getting back to my point, it was that MRI scan that she was she was reluctant to do it, did it, and it showed everything. So you're suggesting people, number one, go to get an MRI scan. And that is something that I'm definitely going to do myself. Never done it. But with that MRI scan, just as a question for the audience, can you kill 2 birds with 1 stone? Can you check for cancer with that same MRI the way Jessie Lee did, and check for visceral fat and make sure we cap? Because it's not cheap. Yeah. It's like $2,000 to do one.
Absolutely. So I have all my patient scans read by a radiologist to look for cancer and all manner of disease. Well, I also look for these biomarkers to help people optimize their health. And, with regard to cancer, I would tell anybody who's listening today, and I will stake my professional name on this, that you want to get rid of visceral fat. There's a very important study that just came out within the past 2 years that shows visceral fat causes and contributes to cancer by its influence on natural killer T cells. And that is the most important mechanism you have for fighting cancer, is your own body's immunity. You, Matt, Colton, and I all have cancer in our body right now. Everybody does. But it's our natural killer T cells that keep us from developing the pathology cancer where we go out and we die because if it's unchecked and it's not caught in time. Those natural killer T cells are responsible for doing that. But visceral fat interferes with that, takes those NK killer T cells and hijacks them and brings them back into visceral fat where they're degraded. And so you no longer have these natural killer T cells surrounding your cancer and they grow out of control. Yeah. So you can just Google NK killer T cells visceral fat, cancer, and read about that study. And what was Big Pharma's response? This is very exciting how visceral fat is causing this through this particular mechanism. And it represents a target for down the road. And in about 10 years, we'll be able to come up with a drug
Yeah, of
to
course.
target this.
Yeah,
Instead
always
of
the
like
case.
get rid of visceral fat right now, everybody who's got cancer and everybody will get cancer in between now and then. Sorry,
Yeah.
you're not important to us. What's important is our money. So
Profit.
you have to look out for yourself, make your own decisions, cut out processed foods, sleep better, cut out alcohol, stop allowing yourself to be stressed, and then don't do too much exercise, which is another fifth cause that we see for contributing to visceral fat.
Oh wow! I can't wait to dig into all that. But my two questions here that I was trying to get on the last one, but I took that tangent. But if you have a visible set of abs, I just got to ask for all the guys like me out there. My whole life I've had abs. Like you can touch them. You can almost grab each little one. Is that a good sign? Does that mean that there's a good chance that my visceral fat? And this is my selfish question. I got to ask for the guys that have worked out their whole freaking lives since I was a little kid. But is that, if you actually have visible set abs, that probably a good indicator that there's not a ton of visceral fat, or is that elusive also, that just because you have abs doesn't mean shit?
Yeah,
that's question number
no
one.
correlation. It has no connection whatsoever.
Oh, no good.
And I would even go further to say that if you have visible abs, you have less adiponectin. And so our species probably walked around with a thin layer of subcutaneous fat for its protected benefit that basically says, I'm not living on the edge. When you are have visible abs, you're basically saying, I'm not hunting so great that I always have enough to eat. You want to have a little visible adiposity, just a thin layer of that visceral fat, are the people that are healthiest, perform better, and look better. Now, you might say from a competition standpoint that you look better with those six-pack, those visible abs. But bodybuilders oftentimes, Eric, are filled with visceral fat, even though they have visible abs.
Okay, good to know.
It's largely from their lifestyle. They're carving out. They're using exogenous insulin, growth hormone, testosterone, and steroids. All of those performance-enhancing substances, gear, they're contributing to visceral fat inside of them, but in their minds, they look good and they think they're healthy. But they're not.
And this is something you can literally start today. So if you started today, how quickly can you stop the process of that's contributing to your decline? Can you start to have actual health results like day one, like to slow down the process? Say you had it. How quick?
This is amazing.
And Davis, look at this. So this is a guy who's 68 years old, Eric. And look at all the visceral fat he has here. And look at the fat in his muscle. So that's human marbling. And then from here to here is just 2 weeks.
Okay, 2 weeks.
Eric's never been a doctor. Eric's never been to medical school. And you're not a radiologist. But Eric just read that guy got better in 2 weeks. What did he do? He cut out processed foods.
Is this a patient of yours? This on the screen behind you?
Yes.
So
this was one of our patients in a study that we followed for the National Science Foundation.
That was a study.
And all he did was cut out those processed foods, and he had that much improvement in just 2 weeks. And then in 35 weeks, an enormous elimination of his visceral fat. And the key here is, Eric, this was the only thing he did was he cut out processed carbohydrates. He didn't exercise 1 minute. So this series of scans, I think, should be in every school, every health class across America, teaching kids how when you eat processed foods, how it contributes to visceral fat. And when you stop eating those processed foods, it allows for the elimination of that visceral fat. And so it's more diet than it is exercise.
Sure.
Now, as important as exercise is, I start with diet and what people are eating as the most important thing for having the fastest impact on people's health.
That's crazy.
Let's do something controversial, Dr. Sean. Eric hit on it. You made a remark Eric made a remark on this and you answered it, but you said one of the things is too much exercise.
Yeah,
and
crazy.
so let's go with that. And I'm thinking, I remember you showing a sprinter example,
freaking
this
me
like
out.
lifelong runner in a study. I don't know if you want to evoke that or use another example, but the
Yeah,
too
no, I
the too
think
much
that's
exercise
good.
thing
So-
is an example of it just wrecks your hormones. You stack on visceral fat, and here all these people of goodwill are just doing what they think is right for their body and their family, yet it's destroying them. So what's an example of that?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so here's an example. This is a 58-year-old executive CEO of a company. And this MRI here, if you can see, he's got a lot of visceral fat in this image up here. I'm just ducking my head so you can see it a little bit. And in 2 months, this guy came back and repeated the scan. It was really unchanged. And it turned out he was not eating processed foods. He was not stressed out. He was not drinking alcohol. And he was getting plenty of sleep. But what he admitted to was that he was running 10 miles a day, 5 days a week. So he's logging 50 miles of running a week. And so he was a distance runner. So we told him, you got to cut out this distance running. It's not enough just to cut out processed foods. You got to cut out all the distance running. And for the National Science Foundation, we found out the form of exercise that most immediately and most effectively eliminates visceral fat is sprinting. And so we put him on sprinting, and look what happened, Eric. How much visceral fat, as all his visceral fat left him in just 2 months.
Can you
by
slide
switching
that
from
screen
being
over?
a distance runner to a sprinter.
Yeah.
And so we have all our client patients now sprinting. Eric, Matt is part of our client group, and he sees everybody sprinting. We're all talking about sprinting,
So HIIT.
and how we sprint, because
not
it has
HIIT.
such a benefit.
Yeah,
eliminating
differentiated.
visceral fat.
If we can go down the sprinting rabbit hole, like it's different than high intensity fitness. It's quite. Tell us about the research behind sprinting,
So the difference between sprinting and other forms
And
like
HIIT?
high intensity exercise that Matt is talking about is, first of all, sprinting is maximum intensity exercise. So in one study, they looked at the amount of hormones that are produced, biological molecules produced in response to exercise in 10 different forms. And at the top of all the 10 different forms of exercise, ways of exercising, number 2 was weightlifting, resistance training. Okay, it produced the most beneficial messaging molecules.
Thank God.
The highest, though, was sprinting.
Damn.
Even more beneficial than lifting weights is sprinting. And so you just don't see a world-class sprinter that's scrawny and doesn't have an enviable build.
Right.
But what was the exercise at the very bottom studied?
Long distance running.
All the different forms of exercise. The one that produced the least benefit was in messaging modules was distance running.
Yep.
So at the top was sprinting, at the bottom was distance running.
Wild.
So Matt alluded to this. There seems to be this love affair and tolerance, if not outright promotion, of jogging and running by the system, conventional healthcare included, that running is a good thing, when it turns out it's not nearly as good as sprinting. If we could get our country sprinting, then we'd do a lot more in terms of impacting the health of our country by helping to, it's the number one form of exercise for eliminating visceral fat. So the 2 things you must do: cut out processed foods, and you got to start sprinting, doing maximum intensity exercise.
What if you're an old guy? You know, I know with sprinting with me, like I've incorporated it here and there throughout my entire life, especially when I was younger and I was an athlete. I mean, that was the game, especially in baseball. We'd sprint from base to base. But you know, the risk of like tearing something or hurting yourself. I mean, if you're going balls to 100%, everything you have, can you start off 50% and build up? Or does that lose the effect of the point of sprinting in the first place? Because if in my mind, sprinting means everything you got.
Absolutely, yeah. Start and build up slowly. And I tell people that.
So 50%?
When you analyze injury, it's in the accelerating too fast. But if you start from a standing position, you just slowly, gradually jog, increase your speed slowly to
sprint.
take 30 seconds or a minute to get up to that speed, so you can reduce that risk for tearing something. It's like Kevin Hart just recently, I think a month ago, accelerated. He raced, I forget, a former NFL player at a barbecue. He challenged him in a sprinting race, and he tore his abdomen. So the point about that is, how far the mighty have fallen. We are so filled with visceral fat that Eric, when he was that baseball player, could crush it.
Yeah.
But you suck today because of probably visceral fat inside of you.
Yeah.
And so you're vulnerable to that injury. And 100,000 years ago, Eric, you would be food for a predator because you wouldn't be able to escape from them because of that lifestyle. So, get that scan, become aware,
I'm gonna sign up.
declare war on the enemy inside
Can
of
you sprint up-
chronic disease and visceral fat.
Can you sprint uphill? I just want to end with this sprint thing because you're helping people right now and you probably don't even realize it. So sprinting uphill to me seems easier on my joints. Or not, and I'm thinking about older guys, and there's a little hill by my house, selfishly.
Way better.
Okay.
Way better. So if you're older, sprint up hills. Joe Rogan was just talking about this.
Right.
Sprinting up a hill is easier
weigh
to
in on
do.
that.
It's actually more difficult in terms of work.
Sure.
But from a biomechanical standpoint, your legs aren't moving as fast. The calculations are safer and easier to do. And there's less joint impact.
Yeah, same outcome
so
though.
Sprinting uphill is phenomenally good for.
I pulled my hamstring. I'm back sprinting again, thank God. But
I was with you.
Here's my mistake. I wasn't arrested, but I had been sprinting up hills, which is amazing. I have 2 ankle surgeries. I was a distance runner, and to even sprint again, I'll be 49. I can't overstate. Health in some degrees is like a subjective feeling, and so many of Dr. Client's clients. Like, I have a couple things to say. So many clients of Dr. Sean's will say, man, I just feel so much more vital and vigorous. Like every man and woman wants to feel good in their bodies. So just for the listener, the mistake I made when you go from sprinting uphill and then I went to a flat surface, my hamstrings, my body mechanics, the entire year has never done that. So I was extending at a high force rate. So just do these things gradually. And I would pick a slight incline. The other thing, I want to emphasize a point. Dr. Sean, one of your clients, first name's Lindsay. He got a NFL championship, or excuse me, he was over at Notre Dame. He was an offensive lineman at Notre Dame. This is like a 6'6" man. He wins the championship. He went on to be on the Packers Super Bowl winning team.
Nice.
He got up to like 300 pounds, his 6'6" frame. Here he is in his 50s, mid-50s. He's 6'6", 215.
Yeah.
A year ago, he couldn't sprint. He kind of lumbered. His knees were swollen. He barely moved his body.
Yeah.
And now if you look at him, he drops videos of him sprinting. It's so inspiring to me when he drops these videos in our private group. And he's 6'6". He looks like a warrior. Like how often do you sprint? So that's a question. Like,
give me the...
Eric's
So
already.
the answer
Eric's
is
got
everybody's different. Lindsay started off slow and progressed, and so he's able to do it more. But you want to start a small number, and nature favors variety. So once you become more acclimated to sprinting, you can safely do maximum intensity sprinting.
Okay.
Then you can do 1 sprint every other day. You can do 6 sprints one day. Take off for 3 days. You can do 2 sprints a day for 5 days in a row. Everything is different. Nature would always challenge us with variety because sometimes we catch a deer in 1 sprint. We get away from a predator. Other times we'd have to run longer, and more frequently, we'd be attacked and challenged more often. So nature does not like workout schedules. Nature does not like muscle memory. So mix it up is the best way to get the benefit from sprinting. So
I gotta ask then. So
change it all the time.
Okay, that's hard for a guy like me because I'm a regimented human. I'm thinking about humans like me, I suppose. But okay, so what should you build up to so there's at least a goal, like some place to get to that can get you to a standard that you can schedule in? Because for me, if I don't see it on schedule, like it's less likely to happen. But if I know, like, hey, Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays are sprint days. Like, what's a healthy thing to add some variety, I suppose, but like at least is there a crude structure you can give me of what is a good?
Yeah, real rough, as long as you don't stay with it too long.
Okay.
1 month, 6 sprints every other day.
Every other day, 6 sprints. How long?
Sprints every other day.
100
8
yards?
seconds. No, it's more.
About 100 yards.
Football
the
field.
The point is, when you do 100 meters, it's about the maximum amount of glycogen expenditure when you've blown through all your glycogen. And so when you look at 100-meter sprinters, they have the best bodies. And then you look at 200-meter sprinters, a little bit less. 400 meters, they're down more. 800 meters, down even more. 5,000 meters, 5K runners,
frail.
really scrawny. And your marathoners, top of the marathon game, they're really, really thin. So that 100-meter mark is the sweet spot. That's where I go for. I get my clients concentrating on that. That's typically at about 10 to 15 seconds maximum intensity.
And then how long in between would you say?
It depends on how many you're going to do. So if you're going to do more, you're going to have a longer break, a longer rest and recovery period. But not too much if you're only going to do 2 or 3 sprints. So you want to rest a little bit to make sure that you can do maximum effort. If you don't rest and you're doing 10 sprints, by the end you're really jogging more than you are sprinting. So you may be need to take 2, 3, 4 minutes in between if you're doing like 10, 15 sprints. At some point,
right now we're doing 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. To think about 10
is good.
10 or 15 is crazy.
30 to 60 seconds in between, Eric.
Damn.
Yeah. There's so many questions. So I want to get into 2 questions. There's appearance, the face, and fasting. So I'm going to put fasting on the table. I know this is a topic Eric is enthused about as well. But first, I want to go to facial appearance, Dr. Sean. Like, one of the most remarkable findings is your link to the face and how you appear and your visceral fat, like they're hand in hand. So tell us what you've discovered.
Yeah, so this appearance of myself right here is age 48, and you can see my face. I look like a completely different individual.
Yeah.
And so what is unaware of for the average person is the incredibly detrimental effect this accumulation of visceral fat has on your face. And then
and you were thinner.
10 years in between these, how I eliminated.
You look younger.
You weighed
10 years later.
What'd you weigh? Like 167 pounds when you were 48, and now you're 10 pounds.
I'm 180 pounds.
And
this is me heavier than I was here.
Muscle.
But it's when you have the wrong kind of weight, the wrong kind of tissue, mostly inflammatory fat. So, and you don't know. Let's get that scanned. So if you're a woman, you'll look more pretty. If you get rid of visceral fat, if you're a man, you'll look like more attractive and a better influencer. So over a period of time, it has a huge effect on your face, and you really want to be eliminating that. So here's another example of, I'll just ask this question of Eric to see if he knows. Eric, and these 2 faces.
You might have to move the camera a little bit.
How long do you think is the time difference between this face here and this face to go from here to improve this much?
Can you shift it just a little bit to your left?
So he could see that?
Yeah. If you shift to your left, I can get a better feel. Okay, so
that's the after.
That's the after.
Okay, now go back to the before.
Yeah, if we could shift it. I'm sorry, yeah.
How long of a time period elapsed? Okay.
I don't know. It didn't look crazy different, but it did look different. It looked thinner.
Yeah. What?
Tighter.
Yeah, you could go back to your original screen setup.
Right in the middle. Yeah, cut each face in half.
There you go.
So the time difference in there is only 3 days.
Okay, so it starts showing up quick.
Well, that's...
Yeah, and what happened was this person had, what they did was they fasted for 72 hours straight.
Okay.
So fasting is another way of eliminating visceral fat. But you, Eric, and if you're the average person listening today, if you have a lot of visceral fat, you're not going to have that much change, because the reality is visceral fat acts as an impedance on your capacity for improving. So here's an example of my own muscle mass, how much I go from age 55 to 59. And what happened is I eliminated my visceral fat, and it's really sort of like a fountain of youth. It allows you, if you're 17 years old, you can put on muscle mass, but if you're 60, you can't. And the reason is not age, but visceral fat. Visceral fat prevents you from putting on muscle.
Now, this is all natural, correct? Like, so a lot of people on social media will accuse you,
Yeah.
You've actually, to gain muscle mass.
Yeah, a lot of people think I'm taking steroids or
Yeah.
testosterone or growth hormone.
But it's
or
visceral fat
insulin.
elimination.
Absolutely nothing. Just completely natural. Just our strategies for eliminating visceral fat that we identified for the National Science Foundation. And that's how you can put on that muscle.
Sure.
But the important point on this is if I took Eric and I had to do these things, he's not going to have the same effect until he gets rid of his visceral fat. So a 17-year-old and a 60-year-old could work out together, lift the exact same amount of weights, do the exact amount of sets, the exact amount of repetitions. And the only difference why the 17-year-old puts on muscle and the 60-year-old doesn't is because 60-year-old's filled with visceral fat, and it prevents his response, his hypertrophy to that stimulus of lifting weights.
Yeah,
so
sure.
the take-home lesson is eliminate your visceral fat, and then you return to a youthful state in terms of your body's response.
Sure. Yeah.
So there are many things: lifting weights, eating healthy, sunshine, doing a sauna, cold showers, fasting. All of these things have a more profound and beneficial response evoked from the body in the absence of visceral fat.
Sure.
And to the extent that visceral
Can I ask
fat
you about
is less.
fasting?
Sure.
This is I watched this video you posted, and this is what hooked me. I was like, all right, I'm flying out to see this man. So it was that episode where, if you could share for the viewer, you were actually doing that mortality test, that balance test, where if you close your eyes and stand on one leg, it's like predictive of your mortality risk. So share that story just so the listener can appreciate how profound fasting is.
Yeah. So when I started to become healthy, I used to do this test that's connected to longevity, which is if you stand on one foot with your eyes closed, first stand on one foot with your eyes open and then close your eyes and be close to something because you're going to lose balance. It's very interesting because it isolates your capacity to interpret where your balance is without the visual cues. And so my fast, when I was originally doing that, I was very wobbly. And then after I did that for 3 days, for 3 years, I started fasting 3 days a week, 72 hours straight. Then I could stand a lot more still, like a tree.
Still
I
holding.
could stand like my kids. So it's a great test. If you're watching this today, you stand on one foot with your eyes closed, you'll be really wobbly.
That was wobbly.
And if you start fasting, doing extended fasting, then it has such an impact and a positive effect on your central nervous system and your brain and your ability to process those signals that you'll have dramatically improved balance, and the ability to prove that stand at that one test is dramatically improved. So longevity is enhanced through fasting. It's repeatedly seen in multitudes of studies, not only in humans, but in many animal models. We see extended fasting has such an important role in not only longevity, but really importantly, health span, how healthy you are. It improves your level of health by eradicating disease.
Yeah. Someone that I've been following for a while is, and we have a lot of mutual friends, is Dr. David Sinclair. I don't know if you're familiar with David Sinclair's work.
Yeah, I know Dr. Sinclair. Sure.
Good dude. I really enjoy the research they're doing over there. But they were actually able to take like a blind mouse and get it to see again. It was just an aged mouse. Or a mouse, but they were able to get the cells in that eye to come back alive and respond to get the mouse's eyesight back. Just profound work they're doing. But he said something interesting. He said the first person that's going to live to be 150 years old has already been born. Now, to me, that's intriguing and super exciting. For us to be able to tap into some of that knowledge is really cool. I think it gives you a unique goal. Like, I want to live to be 150. That sounds awesome. I'd love to be golfing at 100 years old. You think that's realistic? And what is the formula? So you said no processed foods. Fasting is now something we're going to want to incorporate. We're definitely going to want to attack this nasty fat that's causing all this disease and cancer. He talked a lot about NID. He talked about metformin. I'm trying to think some of the other things that he talked about when it comes to cellular regeneration, which I think fasting does that as well. But 150 years old, that sounds cool.
Yeah. So autophagy is a big areas of research that Dr. Sinclair is busy doing, and a lot of researchers in the realm of longevity and health span look at autophagy as well. And autophagy is where the body restores and repairs itself from disease processes. So you can think of it as kind of the maintenance and conditioning of the body during this particular state. And the number one promotion of autophagy is fasting, extended fasting. We also get autophagy through kind of hormetic experiences, saunas, and
Sure.
and exercise.
Cold plunge.
But yeah, you really want to do fasting. It's incredibly beneficial, and also sunshine. Getting some sunshine the benefits exposure of sunshine, cold and hot temperatures. So a sauna and cold plunge therapy. A lot of people are finding out about cold plunge therapy as a means of extending longevity and also quality of life. So, and the way that works is through a type of protein molecule called a shock protein molecule, heat shock protein molecule, and a cold shock protein molecule. And they're really classified as chaperone proteins. And these chaperone proteins show up to make sure things, just like it sounds, things are going well. And so you have less level of disease and less production of protein molecules that are in error, less problems. So hormesis, that which does not kill us, makes us stronger,
Right.
is really an important concept a lot of people don't understand. So we want certain, tough, resilient building practices in our life if we're going to improve and have the kind of quality of life that we really need to have if we're going to maximize this thing called, our time living here on Earth.
Yeah. When it comes to hormesis, like the different ways that you can get your body towards hormesis, fasting being one, your body thinks it's starving. The sauna thinks it's, you're heating up to death. Cold plunge thinks you're freezing. Like that whole concept that gets your body to, get to a different place because it's going to that survival mode. I think that's amazing. Are all of them basically the same? This is a question I've had for a long time. I've never really found a way to answer it. For example, if I prefer sauna because I have access to a sauna and cold plunges, just say it's just harder, or I hate it because I do. Do those two, can one be exchanged for the other? Or are they working on your body in different ways that are both should be both contributing to your health? Or can I just do sauna and be okay? Or is that not enough?
He's avoiding the cold.
Well, you can do it, but there's more benefit derived to the human that does both.
That does both.
So many humans don't do cold thermogenesis. They're not actively pursuing cold plunge and cold showers. But one of the big difference between heat exposure, heat hormesis, and cold exposure is through brown adipose tissue. Brown adipose tissue is also called brown fat. And so brown fat is beneficial. It's tied to metabolism. So one of the benefits when you get into this cold is it helps to burn fat and upregulate and enhances your metabolism in a way that you're not going to get just by going into a sauna.
Right.
But the sauna has other benefits that you don't get when you just get exposure to cold.
Sure.
And so we see a lot of disease reversal, and particularly dementia. Dementia, if you use a sauna,
That's big.
15 minutes for 4 to 7 times a week, you reduce your risk for dementia an astounding 65%.
Amazing.
So if you're listening to me today, you can reduce your risk for dementia just by doing a sauna 4 to 7 times a week for just 15 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes. And the temperature in the studies was about 175 degrees. And it's a fantastic hormetic experience. And not only that, but it cuts your risk for mortality for a heart attack and stroke right in half.
That's incredible.
And it cuts your risk basically for all mortality, all forms of disease, 45%, so almost in half.
There's no medicine that can do that.
Really, really important to do a
it's-
sauna. And you want to do a dry finish, not the infrared.
I know, and knowing Dr. Sean's work, you've got long form videos on just one topic like sleep or various things. But I'll say, just doing a sauna right before bed, I sleep like a baby wrapped in a puffy little cloud with a teddy bear, and I go into a black oblivion,
nice.
and I wake up with a smile on my face. And talk to us about sleep. Like I almost want to. when you sleep so well with kids, you wake up, you cry because you got a good night's sleep. Like I almost want to cry with gratitude. I swear to God. Like if I sauna before bed, I wake up, I'm like, oh, thank God. I could just tell I slept well. Talk to us about the importance of sleep and how it's related to visceral fat.
Yeah. So visceral fat has a direct correlation to impaired sleeping. So if anybody is not sleeping either long enough or well enough, and we pay attention too much, to lifting weights, how many reps we do, but it's also how well you lift those weights, how well you do things. And it's the same thing with sleep. You might be hitting your numbers in terms of going to bed and laying in bed and seemingly asleep for 8 hours, but the quality of your sleep may be poor. So if you do, as Matt suggested, take a sauna, have a sauna session, or even just a 5-minute hot shower before you go to bed, science shows it significantly improves the quality of sleep by allowing you to have deeper engagement of the different stages of sleep that you have so that they're more beneficial. And also doing things to prevent impairment of sleep, like don't eat before you go to bed for 3 hours. You want to eat your meal. 3 hours later is when you want to sleep. And then light management, getting a sunset at the end of your day, set your circadian rhythm with this beautiful production of endogenous melatonin, which dusts any of the melatonin that we see being manufactured and sold in Rite Aid, Walgreens, all these different stores that sell sleep supplements, melatonin. Nothing works as well as your pineal glands production of melatonin. That's the good stuff. You want your body to make it, and sunrises and sunsets, being as healthy as you possibly can, doing exercise during the day, and then limiting your exposure to artificial at night. We use candles in the O'Mara household at nighttime. We dim our lights and get rid of the artificial lights, and we operate with candles so that and red lights so that we can ease ourselves into sleep and sleep, like Matt says, all like babies.
Here's how sensitive you get
nice
to it.
sleep.
Even the light changes in our house. Like if I open the fridge at 8:30 and I feel like a hormonal obliteration, right? Like that light, I'm like, oh my God. And so I know a lot of your clients, and myself included, you put a little red tape on your refrigerator light, because once you, I'll say this, once you actually start to apply these kinds of strategies religiously, if you deviate, your natural biology tells you immediately that something's not ideal. Like, so even something as simple as opening the fridge at 9 p.m. to me, it's like, oh, I feel terrible. And I think it's a good indicator that you're on track. Talk to us about this. People don't like to hear this. I think the biggest blessing in my case is adopting all of your strategies. So in our world, everybody's accustomed to like, oh, I have a wedding coming up. I think I'll lose quick 20 pounds, or I'll start working out here, but I'll have a drink here, or I'll consume these processed foods, but I'll do CrossFit to offset it. And meanwhile, if you look at their pictures or their life, a year later, they look a little older. They're performing a little less. They have more disease, even though they're farting around. This really takes an all-in commitment. How do you coach people who are new to these kind of strategies, keep them from getting overwhelmed, but at the same time, inspire them to go all in on their health? Like, one thing I admire about Eric, he's really a committed man. With all the best knowledge he has, he'll go all in on it, whether it's business or that. Not everybody, how do you coach people to go all in? Often you'll say it's rare that people will.
Yeah. Well, I think it's one insight that I share with my clients to get them to understand. It's a principle that most people don't understand this, and if you're listening today, you probably have never thought about this, but your most important physical asset of everything you could point or touch to that belongs to you, the most important thing is your body. It's not your car, it's not your house, it's not your money, it's not your portfolio, investment portfolio. It's nothing other than your body. And the reason is because nothing else has more of an impact in defining and setting how much you're either going to enjoy or suffer every future circumstance for the rest of your life. It's your body that has the biggest impact. And many billionaires, ultra high net worth individuals have made the sad mistake of not understanding that. And they get to a point where they've accumulated all these things that are more important to them. and then they've lost their health, and all their money they could have won't get it back. I used to take care of royal family members, and they died miserable deaths just like a common person, because all their money couldn't help them recover their health that they once had, that's now lost. So if you can get people to understand their body's their most important thing, then they can start making decisions about how they live their lives. And one of my favorite quotes is Joe Rogan's quote: once you understand a weight very broadly, you see it in all things. So once you understand your body is your most important physical asset, then you begin seeing it in every decision that you make throughout the day. How's that going to impact my body? How's that going to help my health? How's that going to hurt me? How's it going to be beneficial? And then they're enlightened and empowered to have greater insight and greater willpower to make these important decisions and start benefiting from it.
That's amazing. I have someone I want to introduce you to, someone that's very dear to me. He's a business partner of mine, but he's much more than that. He's like family, and he's fulfilled a unique role in my life. I've been an incredible mentor, and I'm very blessed to have been able to connect with him in life and then do business together. What a blessing it's been. But he just hit 70. He just sold one of his 9 companies, and he's one of the wealthiest people in the world. But to watch the amount of pain he's always in, surgeries, he's always got shit going on with him, and he's got kidney stones. It's always something, and my heart feels for how much pain he seems to always be in. It's almost like he can't enjoy the fruits of all that years of work. And it breaks my heart when he talks about trying to make sure he's setting up his wife for the end, and again, he should be out there living right now. I would love to introduce him to you and to connect a 70-year-old man that has, every resource in the world at his disposal. He can't,
send him to me.
He can't. We'll come together. We'll come as a package.
One of my healthiest clients is 77 years old. Matt, you look at this. These are typical legs, right?
Yeah.
Filled with human marbling.
Yeah.
Look at that. Do we have anybody in the Alpha group with legs like
Sure.
this?
Wow.
Yeah, and obviously
This is Chuck, 77-year-old bad Fanny Chuck. This guy is so awesome.
Yeah.
And so your 70-year-old friend, your mentor, he could live like this.
Yeah.
It's not how old you are.
Sure. Yeah.
It's kind of decisions you make. Now, Chuck is so disciplined. Chuck's an elk hunter. He runs young guys into the ground. But Chuck is also chairman of the board of a bank. This guy crushes it in his health and his life. So the 70-year-old's probably crushed it in the business world, maybe. But send him my way.
I will.
Get some MRIs on him. We'll tell him what he's got to do to get help.
It'd be cool to use him as a real life person in my life to be able to kind of case study and put him through the program. I know you're gonna have to start slow with him. It's funny when I talk to, even from my base knowledge that I have that I've acquired over the years, trying to talk to the older generations about health it's like they are so set in their ways. They just don't understand that. That is not healthy. That whatever, they think a Subway sandwich is like a healthy option. It just blows my mind, and you wonder why they never feel good. And again, you talk to him like, oh, I've tried everything. He's tried all sorts of different diets, and I'm just looking at him like, no, so I can't wait to kind of see this transpire. But thank you for that. This will be such a gift to kind of connect you to. But I'm so sick and tired of hearing, oh, he's at the Mayo Clinic. Oh, he's at the Cleveland Clinic. I mean, he goes to the best physicians in the world, and he's always treating some disease or some issue or some problem, and it breaks my heart. So this will be fun. I wanted to ask you.
Yeah, I'd love to do it. That's my deal. Health optimization. I'll help him out.
This will be cool. Yeah, I know we'll have to start really slow, but I think we're going to start with his wife. We'll get her on board, and then she'll be the one that this is cool that now I got to connect with you first, because I've already talked to you about that, or his wife about you just through Matt, but now that I've had this interaction, I'm going to gas pedal this thing down. This is going to be fun. I wanted to ask you another thing that is big in this world of optimization is the importance of grounding, and then red light. If you can touch on red light as well, how important is that to make sure that we're touching the earth and that magnetic pull through the earth is working through our body? Why is that important? That's just something that interests me personally.
I think it's fantastic. So we always had this relationship to the earth, and we've lost it. We've lost our connection to it, and these negative ions, these negative charges that come from the earth, are associated with improving our health and reducing disease and helping us to prevent disease. And one of the biggest problems, I'm an emergency medicine doctor. One of the big problems that we see in the elderly is just they fall on the ground, they can't get up, and they're living alone because they've lost that connection and relationship to the earth. And traditional people, tribes, they would always sit on the ground, they'd eat on the ground, they'd rest on the ground, they'd sleep on the ground. So they're always on the ground and they were in better condition. And we've just lost that connection. So I encourage my clients to ground. I encourage them to go out and walk barefoot, walk barefoot at the beach,
show you my
get connection to the ground. It's hugely, hugely beneficial.
These are so as a client of Dr. Sean's, these are some leather shoes. I do what he says. So my feet have never felt stronger, and I squat all the time. Dr. Sean, I remember you saying you only sit in a chair out of love for another human being. Even just sitting in this way, it's so bad for your joints and your vasculature. So when I'm not working, I'm like in a full squat on the floor with my kids, walking around. So it's what he's telling, and I could tell the difference. I feel fantastic from doing it.
But what's happening? Like, I don't get what's happening. I think if you connect the dot to what's happening, it makes it more likely that someone will do it. So it's not like
which part?
The science behind it. Yeah, like what's the science behind connecting with the earth?
Yeah, so it's actually electrical charges, these negative charges that are in the earth, a small amount but constant exposure to them are very beneficial. So you feel it. The other interesting thing about it is negative ions. You same kind of thing. You go around a surf in a beach, a waterfall. You get these negative ions are present there. Running water. They're present in the atmosphere after a thunderstorm, and so you see people lingering at the beach at waterfalls. So you're just kind of standing around staring at the waterfall, and they feel good because of those negative charges. And that's why you feel better when you walk barefoot at the beach. You feel better walking barefoot on a path than if you wear rubber sole shoes, and it interferes with those charges. So there have been lots of voltmeter tests you can get connected to your body and actually see the influence of these charges coming from the ground. But they are very beneficial. They improve mood and they improve your level of health. Yeah. And so we walk around with rubber sole shoes and sneakers, and we've lost this connection. So it's yet another way of helping to improve your health and maintaining yourself.
You're not a fan of red light therapy. Eric also asked about that. Say more about why.
Yeah. So I am and I'm not. And so the reason I'm not such the conventional red light therapy is it's a cheap man-made version. It's sort of like saying a man-made orange or a man-made piece of meat. It's not as good as the real thing. The real red light that you want is from infrared from the sun at sunrises and sunsets, and they're very beneficial on your neurotransmitters and setting your circadian rhythm and protecting, believe it or not, from sunburn later in the day. So when you get exposure to sunrise in the morning and sunsets at night, it helps to protect you from the burning energy that you'd otherwise be exposed to in sunshine. So infrared coming from the sun, that red light therapy is the most beneficial. A cheapened artificial version of it, if you cannot get exposure to sunrise and sunsets, can be gleaned from a machine. Sure. But I get my clients to get exposure to sunrise and sunsets because it's just so much better.
How much time, if I see the sunrise and I got a busy schedule and I'm going to try to catch it real quick, trying to think about a busy guy's schedule, because I think the problem is people's schedule is just so if you were out there for 1 minute, 60 seconds of sunrise touching my face, is that work? I'm thinking about wintertime.
Absolutely. Even 1 minute.
1 minute.
Eric,
okay.
Is profoundly beneficial.
Should I get naked, or is my face and arm? Is my face and arms enough?
Don't get arrested.
Well, I got a private backyard.
That's sunrise and sun infrared rays exposed on your full body is hugely beneficial. Sure. And the same thing during the day, if you can get sunlight on your body as much as possible, produce testosterone, nitric oxide. Here's a cool thing: skin turgor. You just pull your skin up, let it snap back. If you go out in the sunshine, you pull it up, or before you go out in the sunshine, you'll see your skin is slow. But then when you go out in the sun, after you've been out there in a while, it snaps back much faster. And what does that mean? That your body has made nitric oxide and your blood flow throughout your body was just enhanced by going out in the sun. And this is why I advocate for more exposure to sunlight so you can get better blood flow to your brain, to your heart, to your kidneys, to your liver, to your skin, to your face, to your eyes, so that you're healthier and perform better and look better.
Yeah.
So sunshine is this demonized thing. You know, they have us terrified of sun, they have us terrified of fat, they've terrified of meat. And the next thing, I joke with my clients, the next thing, but I think it's going to happen, they're going to be warning us against water. Stop drinking water. Stuff is bad for us. We made this new laboratory-produced liquid. That's what you want to drink. Don't drink water anymore. So get back to the basics. Sunshine, maximum intensity exercise, cut out processed foods, eat food in whole forms, sleep better, and get yourself some exposure to heat and cold. That's a good wrap up there.
Yeah, I love it. There's a few things that are like I'm dying to ask you. So thinking about optimization and like some of the stuff that's out there, like I'll go through a little bit of a list here, but like NAD, for example, even Jessie Lee, her big piece of advice was like the power of ozone, these new treatments where they're putting oxygen back into your blood. I think that's basically what it is. Some of these extracurricular activities on top of that stuff. How much value do you see in peptides, but some of these extracurriculars, I guess we call them, to trying to get optimized? Again, like if you cover the basis of all your stuff first, do you see benefits here? Because here's the truth. Countless people are looking at this stuff, investing money in this stuff. Is there any benefit at all that you see?
Yeah, I think there is benefit to ozone, but I recommend to my clients, again, don't get the fake red light. Go out to the sun and get it for real. The same thing with ozone. Don't use an ozone generator. Go out and get real ozone that you can get exposed to after a thunderstorm. Way better, way more refreshing, and probably a lot safer. We just don't have enough studies about the artificially generated forms of ozone that I think we could potentially have some harm from that. And the same thing with infrared saunas. You know, the infrared energy that comes out of those saunas penetrate our skin way deeper into our tissues, really to our bone. And we're accustomed to the infrared rays coming from the sun that just barely get through our skin and into maybe some of our subcutaneous fat. So I always opt for nature. Yeah. Eric, I always say, try to get these sources. And so when it comes to peptides, I would prefer to get it from the healthiest animal I could get. So like Cameron Haynes, he goes out and hunts the best animals, the best pride, bulls that he can get. And that's ancestrally how we hunted. Our species had the capacity, as we had cerebral cortex, to choose not the old animal or the easy animal to hunt, the young animal, like all other predators do, but use their cerebral cortex to learn that the healthiest animal conferred the greatest health benefits upon us. And so we would choose that particular source of food. So when it comes to peptides, that's how I try to do it. I get my peptides from the healthiest animal possible. I'm consumed with trying to figure out what the healthiest meat is and trying to advocate for that. I have a client that's a veterinarian. I'm working with him on research. Very, very interesting angle. And I'm surprised that there's about as much attention to optimize the health of an animal as there is to optimize the health of humans from conventional physicians that there are from conventional veterinarians.
You mentioned
they're not really good at it.
Speaking of a veterinarian, I remember you mentioning a veterinarian found that the most sickly cows or cattle they care for are the ones given an atypical diet. They're given grains and they're not grass-fed, whereas the grass-fed animals hardly ever get ill. Talk to us about, not only is a good starting place to eliminate processed foods, but you're also a big advocate. Oh, I see it on the screen there, the marbling. Yeah. You're a big advocate of we haven't even talked about probably your number one strategy, which is the gut biome. So it's related to this. Yeah. So talk to us about
food in general. I have so many food questions.
Yeah. So I'll hit this one real quick. So this one steak behind me that's very lean, it doesn't have much fat in it. That's 100% grass-fed, grass-finished. And this other steak with all this marbling in it is carbohydrate fed, grain fed. Even I was surprised to find out that in cattle feed they even put Skittles, candy, the expired candy, carbohydrates in these animals. And my veterinarian client said, I never got called for grass-fed cows. He was a farm veterinarian. He says, all my money, all the calls came from grain-fed cows. Doesn't that sound like our species? People that eat a species appropriate diet, when we eat healthy, what we're supposed to, we don't have problems with this and we don't have to go to the doctor. So, to also segue this into my most important strategy, what it comes down to is your microbiome. So I get people to understand the collection of organisms inside your gut. Their bacteria, fungi, yeast, viruses. These organisms collectively are known as the microbiome, and they singularly have the most powerful impact on your health. And so I purpose to try to get my clients enlightened to the microbiome, to understand it, to try to optimize their microbiome by looking at their lives from the point of view of how they make decisions to get the most number of beneficial microbes possible inside of them and the least amount of detrimental ones. So cut out chlorine, cut out exposure to chemicals, cut out processed foods that are filled with food preservatives that stop bacteria from growing and keep food fresh so it doesn't become rancid and stale. But those food preservatives go down and play, havoc with your collection of microbes that you have living in your gut, and also antibiotics. So we see in studies, pediatric studies, the earlier a child or a baby is given an antibiotic, the more likely it is they're going to be obese or diabetic later in life. So the use of antibiotics is like a neutron bomb going down to gut, because some baby has a small infection in their membrane of their ear. We're going to give them this antibiotic that goes down and they swallow, and it's just this neutron bomb going off in their gut, and it's causing all these problems. So that's why the epidemic of obesity, in large part, is best explained through this model of a declining microbiome. We're literally attacking, destroying this wonderful asset that we have in our body. And people have, as a consequence of this, all these irrational cravings for food. And it's really nothing more than obesogenic, pathogenic microbes down there that are influencing us as their host to eat for them. We get to a point where we're influenced by cravings. We're not eating for ourselves. We're eating for these microbes that are inside of us that demand and need simple sugars and processed carbohydrates that they can access quickly to feed themselves. And they out-evolve us. I mean, they literally reproduce in minutes to hours, and we have to take a lifetime to reproduce. So they're constantly evolving and influencing their hosts. So once you become aware of it, and then you can start eating through strategies, cutting out processed foods, you can eliminate those cravings, and also by incorporating the use of traditional foods, especially fermented foods. So, fermented cheeses, fermented things like kimchi and sauerkraut and kvass, and these traditional foods that are fermented, that are rich in these microbes going back thousands of years, that are associated in lots of studies with the absence of disease and the presence of better health.
Yeah, it's funny you were talking about like those microbes. They create the cravings. For me personally, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there like me too. But for me, I can be solid all day. Like I'm rock solid. Diet 100%. I can anything I want in the day. Easy to fast. Easy. I mean, it's so easy for me. At night, I have these intense sugar cravings where I want sweets. Like I literally sometimes will wake up in the middle of the night like a hungry, like wolf that is going to rip through the kitchen and kill anything it sees that's sugary. So if you're trying to wean off the addiction of sugar, let's just probably call it what it is. It's weird that it doesn't show up for me at nighttime. I don't know what that is, the chemistry behind that. But it'll be something that I really want to put focus on and work through. And because I always have cheat days where I can get there, like I can fight through it, and then I'll just go nuts that day. And I've always said, oh, that's okay to do that. And I think a lot of people that are pretty disciplined give themselves those outlets. And I probably know just through math that that's not acceptable by you, that you're all in or you're not. But number one, how do you get rid of sugar cravings? Is there a secret hack? Can you help someone work their way there in a reasonable manner that's not like torture? And then how do you feel about cheat days? Because that is a common thing that you'll hear in the world, where like you have a day where the rules don't apply, and it's sort of like, for me, it's always a goal to get to, and then it restarts, and it's kept me on track my whole life by having these cheat days. Quarter the Dwayne the Johnson Rock, his big thing is cheat days. He'll have pizzas and all the crap. It's just part of, you got to live a little bit. You want to enjoy something. But anyway, maybe that's teed up. You take it where you want.
Yeah. So cheat days are something that some people can get away with, and other people, they have one cheat day and it turns into a cheat week, and they never recover, and they just circle the drain.
Okay.
And so we see this from time to time. And the difference is the microbes that you have inside you. I mean, some people just can't pull themselves up, and they just continue to cycle down. But with every cheat day, when you contribute to that, with processed carbohydrates, a small amount of visceral fat is added within you. And we could do this. We could show people would eat, rice over a weekend, and we show them where it caused visceral fat on their scan.
Wow.
We'd scan them on a Friday and bring them back
Just
Monday.
rice?
They'd have rice over the weekend, and just something as innocuous that we can see, because the resolution of an MRI is that good.
Damn.
So an awareness of even just a small, amount of processed foods does cause a little bit of contribution, and they would never have detected that, but for the fact that they had this MRI.
Sure.
Now, some people actually claim, and I I don't doubt this, that when they eat that rice, they feel a little more fuller, like they feel like
satiated.
Yeah, well, it's also like, I don't know, they just feel like fat accumulated in their abdomen. It's just, and when we scan them, it was sure enough, it was there. We could see it. So, yeah, everybody's a little bit different, and so we work hard with people and clients to help them overcome it. But it's not a light switch. Health is a journey, and the cravings that you get, and learning, how to eat healthier is really a process to get there, and it's not something that you just will to happen immediately. It's learned over a period of time, but it's very successful. My oldest client that's been with me is 8 years, came to me when he was 450 pounds, had a 56-inch waist, and we got him down to a 31-inch waist, and he's never gained his weight back.
Yeah.
He's still at a 31-inch waist, has 15-inch arms, still, he's now age 70, still benching a huge amount of weight and looking great, because we got him to work within his microbiome, overcome these cravings, and he's off his testosterone. He's doing awesome.
So with sugar, it's like, what is someone can take today? Can they replace the craving with blueberries? Like, is there any just simple thing that you would recommend and would support with science that gives them an outlet to go use in real time?
Well, one thing that is beneficial is that they can start doing is actually fermenting fruit. Mm-hmm. So you get the flavor of fruit, but it's fermented, so the carbohydrates are removed. But even just transitioning off of the simple sugars and onto fruit, and then gradually cutting back is the direction you want to move to. And so I don't have a particular favorite that I'd say, all right, well, just stay with this forever. There's no one shoe that fits everybody. It's got to be a different, customized approach to how you eat and how you live. And so, but I just tell people, start first with the processed foods, cut out the ice creams and the candies and the cotton candy and things like that,
sure,
and transition into fruit. And then eventually you can even cut back on the carbohydrates from fruit.
Yeah.
Fruit today is so filled with sugar.
That's true.
It's really
it's not
a
it's
natural
not like
product.
ancestral fruit. I'll speak to this just as a client of Dr. Sean's and where I'm at with the fruit and sugar thing. We had huckleberries this summer. We picked them with our kids, and I had a few. I wanted to taste what like a natural berry, and it tasted good, but it was nowhere as sweet as conventional fruit. But I'll say this, Eric, like now that I've really respected my biome, and I know most of Dr. Sean's clients gradually transition to a meat-based, grass-fed finished with a lot of ferments, I don't crave the sugar. It's no longer a wrestling match.
You just got to get people over the hump.
I think it's really the biome. I remember like 2 weeks in, I ate this whole bowl of dates, and Dr. Sean joked with me. He's like, those are just like the biome singing, or the gut bacteria just calling me back, like those, were they mermaids who brought the sailors to crash on a rock at sea?
Sirens.
The sirens, right?
Sirens of
you were joking with me,
Homer's
and
Odyssey.
I paced around the kitchen staring at those dates, wanting those dates, and I was like, screw it, I'm going to eat the bowl of dates. But now I could stare at a cookie. There's no craving, like none. And I don't cheat. Like I just don't. But I'll say I think it's a function of the biome.
That sounds like perfection. And a lot of times that'll be the enemy of execution for people, is thinking they have to be so perfect. It's like all in or nothing. But I would say that a bowl of blueberries compared to a bowl of Skittles is 1,000 times better option.
If you were to take it
you
on the
gotta
spectrum.
think about the masses here.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Like Dr. Sean's research, if you just transition to no processed foods, you already saw the benefit of that on that 68-year-old client. And I'll just say this. I agree with you. I coach people one-on-one. I wouldn't be like, you have to be here tomorrow. Here's what I've found, and I think this is missing. It's enjoyable. It's not like you get kind of like, I wonder how optimal I can be. Like now I'll be 49 in October, and I'm like, I bet you at 55, I'll be faster and stronger and healthier. I know that. I feel confident in this. And so it's not like I feel like I'm missing out on life, because it's very gratifying. Like I'll ferment blueberries and put them on like a little bit of yogurt as a treat once in a while or something like that. But I hear what you're saying, but it becomes like I could feel even better. And it's just like an addictive thing in the right direction. Yeah. But yeah, it would be like my kids have a piece of fruit. I mean, you gotta be balanced in things, but
you never want to give up on optimizing your health because you think you're going to have to sacrifice anything. You want your decisions about health to be a journey based on every achievement, everything you've done helps you to head in the right direction. Yeah. So absolutely, stop eating the processed foods. Eat your blueberries. I guess you could eat really sweet fruit if you want, but you want to gradually start cutting that back. I mean, you do not want to be living on the kind of fruit that Eric or Matt was talking about from a grocery store, because it's all basically hybridized. It's fake. It's genetically modified fruit to increase the amount of fructose, in it, because food engineers have designed it, to be, more tasty so that it sells more. But it's no longer a real natural fruit that helps you out. Make no mistake about that.
Even fruit from like a Whole Food store, like from Pilgrims, is which a little organic store in our market, just a little like family store that's supposed to be all like local grounds. But like there's a lot of people listening. That's such a broad sweeping statement. I want to make sure all fruit, even from like health stores.
You'll never get me to go along with that.
Yeah.
Never all.
Okay.
No. What I'm talking about are the ones that have been genetically modified.
Sure.
So the ones where the CEO is called the food engineer and said, I'm giving you 10% of all of the profit, increased sales that you get when you change that fruit. So there are a lot of fruit that
can you trust organic though? That's the big question. Can you trust this label of organic or whatever?
No.
What should you be looking for?
Organic will just mean that it doesn't have chemicals, but it doesn't mean it hasn't been hybridized, genetically modified.
Is there something we can look for then? Like what should the consumer in the grocery store that's shopping for their family look for when it comes to, because if you're going to say that about fruit, couldn't you say that about vegetables? This is getting really tricky.
He Dr. Sean, myself included, I only eat fermented vegetables, and I've only eaten it all. I haven't had a vegetable all year unless it was fermented. Like, so the beautiful thing I love about Dr. Sean's work is like you could just cut processed foods and flourish. If you are inspired to optimize further, at least as far as I'm taking it.
Where do you get fermented vegetables?
That would be like a sauerkraut, a kimchi. There's a whole ferment section in any health food
I eat
market.
Sauerkraut every day. I have beet sauerkraut.
I don't.
But like you just have
fruit.
A whole plate of it, or
no? It's just like more as a garnish, and Dr. Sean can elaborate on it. But it's more. I eat basically red meat.
So it's
eggs.
100% meat is what I'm hearing, with a little bit of garnish.
Yeah, it's
and no
basically, how would you characterize it?
Who can live
fruit.
that way? I'm sorry. Man.
No.
Colton's over here laughing.
No.
That's heavy.
Eric, I think you're mistaking that. If you look at my strategies on Instagram, I just have people like Eric, Matt said, just cut out processed foods. Just start with that.
Yeah.
If you're going to represent to people listening today that they got to cut out all fruit, they're never going to go along with cutting out processed foods.
I'm glad we're addressing that
because
it sounds that way.
That you make a step. I just want people to sit less, maybe do some more walking, cut out processed foods. Start with there, But if if you start discussing how fruit has been modified and changed, you're going to distract people from the importance of making a decision to at least start to get healthy. So that's what I like to do. I'm on social media trying to get people to make a step in the right direction with their health. Don't talk about getting people off fruit. You'll scare them.
I know that.
And they won't get up and walk.
100%.
So
Totally agree.
I think it's important to try to just keep with the basics, the fundamentals. And you could talk about the importance of fermentation and some of the scientific value behind that and how fruit is improved with it. But you'll scare people into walking and maybe stopping to eat Skittles, stopping eating Captain Crunch for breakfast in the morning.
Yeah.
There's some basic steps that I think are really helpful to start with.
That's a no-brainer. I drink fermented pea protein is one of my favorite sources of protein, especially when I'm on a restrictive calorie diet and I just trying to get my protein and on a busy schedule. I take my protein shakes everywhere. I suppose you would consider that processed, obviously. The product comes from Canada. I love it. My stomach's happy when I drink it, but to be able to address some of these types of process, are you completely against that? Because there's a lot of fitness people in the world that drink protein shakes, and I'm just trying to really consider like the broad scope of process.
I'd rather eat that than pizza. So
sure.
Never, I won't get. I don't like never.
Is that bad though?
Always and things like that, or completely. You asked about, how do you choose good things? So here's an example, like vegetables. When it comes to, I eat vegetables and I like to ferment them. I like to take them and ferment them. They preserve longer. And so when it comes to fermenting them, I want them in the best condition. So I know they haven't been fed glyphosate if there's bug bites all over them. So if I buy a cabbage and there's bug bites all over it, I'm into that. I think that's awesome. There's no bug spray on it and I can be sure of it. And if there's bug spray on it, it destroys the bacteria that are beneficial that come as part of nature when food is either ingested or food is fermented. So looking for those little kind of signs is one way of looking at it. We look at things too clean and we want them to be real pretty and things like that and easy and comfortable, and it's not always the case. But just start, if you like fermented fermented pea protein, you can use that, but I personally, would like to see you, try get a more bioavailable form of protein, maybe at some point down the road, that would be even more beneficial for you for getting, maximum muscle protein synthesis and better muscle production, through probably just good, super healthy wild game meat would be, in my opinion, better.
Yeah, it's funny. My wife just cut open a broccoli the other day before I flew out of town, like right before I left, and there's thousands of little bugs that came out of it. And that maybe that's a shout out to pilgrims. It's good food. They're not.
I'm sure.
There's bugs in it.
It's true.
So she washed those vegetables were very good that day. We didn't throw them all away. We kept them, but it was good. There's a documentary out that caught a lot of momentum. And it's called Game Changers on Netflix. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I am familiar with Game Changers.
Yeah, a lot of
not the greatest science, I'll say that.
Yeah, explain that. The fat in the blood that's coming from protein, animal protein, and the hormones that are in the animals, and milk and dairy. Like, can you touch on some of that? Because I know when you go down this road, There's going to be all kinds of people that are so one. It's almost like become political, which is sort of weird. And I guess everybody's different. But is there a way that to maybe explain that is soft and just opens up the reality around it all that is from your perspective where it might make sense to those people?
Yeah, so I will say of Game Changer is an effective documentary from the standpoint that it was persuasive and attractive to many people to try out eliminating animal protein as a source of nutrition. I'll give them credit for doing that, but I think it was far more political than it was scientific. And there's a better documentary that's under works right now by to address a reprisal response to the Game Changer documentary. And probably calling it a documentary might be maybe a little
Sure.
A little kind, but it's really lacks science. So, and there's no study that shows any connection correlation between animal protein and disease. The allegations in that are really untrue. I've noticed my own clients when they I have vegan clients that will not eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
I have vegetarian clients. I have Mediterranean clients. I have a variety of different people.
Oh, good.
People are
So it all
eating.
works for
They come
you.
to me.
It all works
Yeah.
for you, though. Okay.
But I have anecdotally seen the ones that perform the best are ones that are eating a meat centric diet.
That's what I love about your work.
I think we have to do more studies.
Yeah.
I think we could do better.
Did you see What the
with,
Health?
Aggregating studies.
Yeah, real quick. Did you see What the Health? Because that one was more about sort of the business behind food, and that was an interesting one. You look at all these donors to the Breast Foundation of America and the dairy industry. They make some compelling cases if you follow money, and you may be able to still actually have that same opinion that you do, and say, yeah, that big business. It's fraught with all sorts of stuff that's bad. And you talk about chemicals being put into food. These are big industries out there. And again, there's a lot of money sloshing around when it comes to sort of the places where the biggest investments are made to fight disease are coming from unique sources that might be causing the problem. That's the argument.
Yeah, no, I think it's really the case, Eric, when you bring up that movie, and I think there are many other examples of the confluence and influence collectively from various levels of and channels of society. So you have conventional healthcare profiting through big pharma,
Yeah.
and you also have big food processors that are contributing to this.
Tyson,
and so
yeah.
Yeah, Tyson, enormous conglomerates behind these food brands that are highly palatable foods that are easy and cheap to purchase and are tasty. And there's a lack of awareness on the part of consumers about the detriment that is consequential to the consumption of those kind of foods. And so that's why I advocate initially just eating food in whole form, cutting out processed foods, and having people educated to the benefit that comes from that. And we would be a lot better off, Eric, if we, excuse me, did not have these food processors that behind so much money and profit driving a lot of our food policies, our school lunch programs, and it also starts just at home. You got parents that put a slice of really colorful cake with pretty icing and a candle, and they start clapping up and down and singing a song to this 1-year-old, forming these brain pathways. It'd be better off if that child had a plate of vegetables or a piece of meat, and not those colorful sweet things that were placed in front of that child, and that child had reinforced good healthy food choices instead of processed sweetened candy like choices.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. Is there a healthy way to let a child celebrate a birthday that's not processed, where you can still have the effect I just think there's a lot of people out there that like, hey, Matt, like your kids, they have a birthday. They see their friends having big birthdays. You're going to put vegetables in front of them. Like,
No, my wife makes.
is there a healthy options? My
Yeah,
question.
yeah,
It's not processy.
She makes sourdough from scratch, and she'll make a cake from scratch with whole
strawberries?
cream, very little sugar, blueberries on top, a candle.
Yeah.
But it's light.
There's still options though, so it's not
Yeah,
so crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Dr. O'Mara just is
People want to
advocating
know
a raw
that, like,
piece of
there's
asparagus.
options to live a life that that's not so
And this
crazy.
it's also a lot of these questions. You got to know the level you're speaking at and the context, and they're not answerable at the same levels. So
I can tell you, no one's at your level, Matt. They're not like people.
Oh, Dr.
not
Sean
one
says that as
customer
much.
out
Do you know
there
the percentage?
is at your level?
He jokes.
They're not.
His clientele that will fully brace and go all in are a very slim minority.
Yeah, it's
But
tiny.
you could still benefit from all the strategies.
sure.
But I just want to emphasize this point with my buddy here. With the MRIs, Sean, if you look at vegan, vegetarian, no processed foods to like carnivore ferments, what the MRI doesn't lie. What do you see?
Yeah, so right at the top, the fastest reduction in visceral fat comes from just eating the healthiest meat possible. So I'm not a pure carnivore because I eat, fermented fruits and fermented vegetables. That's my way of eating. But people that are pure carnivore in the studies have greatest elimination of visceral fat relative to, basically it turns to carbohydrates. The more carbohydrates that are consumed, the more visceral fat production that we would see in there. But I am surprised, Matt, by Vijay, my vegan client from India, who's just as dogmatic of a vegan as you could possibly get. And he has eliminated his visceral fat in large part because he's cut out processed foods. Rice and pasta and pastries and bread.
Good for him. Yeah.
And so he's eating, vegetables in more, complex whole form.
Yeah.
And he's eliminating this huge amount of visceral fat that he had in there. So, the MRI is a great tool to help people get on the right steps. As far as optimizing your health, it really takes a huge, a large number of things going way beyond just how you're going to eat. It's really how you walk, how you exercise, how you sleep,
All of it,
how you get light, how you manage your feelings. There's a huge array of influences when it comes to health.
Yeah. One big question I'm dying to ask, and you just touched on it, kind of that triggered my mind, but this one I feel like was healthy for someone like me who was so sick of meat my whole life. I just meal after I literally hate chicken now because I had a bodybuilding diet. I would have 6 meals a day. I would crush calories. This was how I grew up. I grew up reading Flex Fitness. I was just always a gym rat, and my diet supported that for my whole life, really. But what was really eye-opening to me was just this idea of the middleman, this whole concept that the grass-fed cows that you're talking about, the protein that they source and the B vitamins that are in the bacteria that's on the grass, if all that is true, that middleman, it just opens up more options for me where it's like, okay, protein is protein. If there's not necessarily a better or worse, at the very least, can you talk about that? Because what if someone wants to have a bean, or some other alternative source of protein, to say that oh, this is better than that? I think for me, it lessened it. I wasn't attacking meat necessarily. I was like, oh, there's another option to source a protein and some amino acids from other sources where it's not so specific to one thing. That's all it did, is it opened up my parameter, because I was always taught and ingrained as a child that it had to be animal protein. It had to be that's the kind of protein you want. That vegetable protein is far less superior than animal. And then you look at the biggest animals on earth, and they eat grass. So are they the middleman?
Yeah. So lots of people are thriving and doing better on a vegetarian vegan diet, but I think the confounding that's happening is they've eliminated processed foods.
Sure, of
so
course.
How much of it is maybe because somebody went carnivore or went vegan?
You're right.
Is it because of that decision, or that they have this new attention to health And so suddenly they're not eating Skittles.
Sure.
They're not eating, some of the processed foods. They're maybe walking more, maybe they're exercising more. And that's the problem with nutritional studies, is the confounding that happens. So we looked at, from the National Science Foundation, lifestyle choices that also impacted visceral fat. So we looked at things way beyond diet. So diet tends to be something that's very politically charged, and a lot of people are very troubled over. But I think when it comes down to diet and one particular form of protein or over another, it's very often very hard to eliminate the confounding that happens.
Yeah.
People may not be sleeping as good. People might be sleeping better. People might be doing other things, alcohol. People might be, stressed out. All these different factors come into play and influence and make it more difficult. So I haven't seen really great studies that looked at either plant protein or meat protein that have not had this confounding. And so I don't think science has settled the answer on the quality of protein from either a plant source or an animal source without the contribution of confounding.
Yeah, and dairy, that's my last big one that I'm challenging you guys with.
Before we wrap.
I hate dairy, even though I love it. It crushes my stomach, but God, I love cheese. I'm a cheese whore. I could eat dairy. I literally crave it all the time, but it just crushes particularly milk. If I drink milk, it's a long night. Ice cream, it's going to be a long night of just air. So I stay away from it. But when I became really aware of how my body feels, I now go to the things where make me feel good. When I now eat a meal, if I'm on my type of diet that works for me, I could go run a marathon right after I eat. I don't feel weighted down. I don't feel tired. And so I found a diet that works for me when I'm on. That's when I'm on point. I notice when I eat bad, I feel like a slug. My eyes get heavy and my heart feels heavy. But dairy was one of those things that crushes me. Is dairy something humans should consume?
Yeah, so I think that's your experience, Eric, with dairy is experience of so many people. And so I've had to advise some clients, don't do any dairy at all. Some clients, I've actually encouraged them to reintroduce dairy in a fermented form or introduce it in a raw form. So everybody's different. It depends on where they are with their microbiome or whether they get improvement. So some people have benefit. There are some studies that show that bacteria from dairy are actually very beneficial for helping to reduce symptoms for Lou Gehrig's disease. And so absent some contribution of dairy, there's no beneficial natural food source that we've seen that helps to diminish those symptoms of Lou Gehrig's disease. So, it really is a specific microbiome difference between people. But some people, like you say, cannot tolerate dairy. They can't have A1, they can't have A2. They can't even have it if it's fermented. They can't have it even if it's raw. So there's a variety of different kind of ways of classifications of dairy. And so I think it's on an individual basis, people have to make that choice. I certainly don't want the government trying to make that choice. I think you were wise to pay attention to your body and what's happening to it. And that really is ultimately what people have to take a look at. In my own case, I saw when I added dairy milk into it, it caused me to contribute to unhealthy fat. I saw inflammatory fat go in my body in 18 days between an MRI, at baseline and an MRI 18 days later after drinking milk on a daily basis. So I eliminated milk. I added back fermented milk in the form of kefir, and that visceral fat disappeared. The deep subcutaneous fat disappeared that I was accumulating, so I could consume dairy in a fermented form. But that's not the case for everybody.
Sure.
I think it really is individual.
Yeah, you cut out alcohol too, Matt, right? Completely.
Yeah,
I did.
I cut.
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
and I haven't drank in 3 years.
Yeah.
Is that maybe one of the?
Oh, good for you.
Is that one of the biggest things that someone could look at right now that would change their gut biome? Because for me, I thought about when I really started thinking about it, I'm like, if alcohol kills everything, what's it killing in my stomach?
Yeah. No, I think you're wise to ask that question. It's interesting. In my lifetime, we've seen a lot of discussion about alcohol, but I I've never seen so many people moving away from alcohol in the past 3 years
Yeah.
as I've seen in my lifetime today.
It's happening.
Maybe prohibition because it was a period where it happened in greater numbers. But it is the case that alcohol affects our metabolism, and it has an influence on our microbiome. Recently, I was on a guest. I was a physician on a program on national radio, talking about a condition called autobrewery syndrome, where these microbes reside within your microbiome. Some people have it, where if they eat simple sugars like bread and pasta and rice, it gets converted to alcohol at such a large amount that they literally become legally intoxicated, even without drinking any alcohol. And some of these people have been arrested and charged with drunk driving, and they've been convicted, even though they've never drank alcohol. This has happened to them, and it's a nightmare. And then some of these people, are infected with these microbes through autobrewery syndrome, where they're eating these carbs and they become alcoholics. They become dependent upon alcohol, like you might if you drink alcohol all the time. And then when they stop eating carbs so that they don't get drunk, they're in withdrawal, alcohol withdrawal. Then they start drinking alcohol exogenously to recover from the withdrawal. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare for these people that have autobrewery syndrome. And so it's not a real common condition, but you can Google it. And it's yet another interesting but sad case about how our microbiomes can be very detrimental, and these microbes can play a very pathogenic role with us. So alcohol is one of those complicated subjects, and I generally start from the position talking to clients that if they're able to at least cut back on alcohol, I think it's a good thing. And if they're able to give it up altogether, I have yet to see a person, Eric, give up alcohol and ever regret the decision and not become aware of how much better they feel. How about yourself? In 3 years, how are you doing?
Best decision I ever made in my life. And I was never a big drinker. I was a casual drinker, but I would go to enough charity events and enough dinners where you'd break the ice with a cocktail, where I was always familiar that I never really felt good. For me, it affected me where I'd get really tired quickly and I'd want to fall asleep, but I never felt good the next morning. And I'd always rush to the gym, get in the sauna. I'd feel this obsessive nature to try to counterbalance what the hell I just did last night. And it was really stressful on me. Now I feel powerful. I don't need it. And it's not a projection onto you, because a lot of people you make feel awkward when everyone's ordering cocktails and you order an iced tea. For whatever reason, that makes everyone else feel uncomfortable. And I could see it many times now. And I'm like, oh no, have a drink. I'm totally fine. I don't care. I'm not trying to be better than anyone or anything, but you could just see how it affects other people. But what it's put me in always is actually a position of power. Because by drink 3 of everyone else, I'm still having a good time. I'm feeling amazing. There's nothing like driving home when normally you would have had 4 cocktails with the window down and waving to a cop as you drive by him. It's just truth, man. It's a good feeling. Yeah. And you get to cuddle in bed with your puppies. Like, I love the after effect of when I normally would have drinking. That is like gold to me. And I can't tell you how amazing that is. But yeah, undeniable, the benefits have been incredible.
Yeah, I agree with you. And just going to bed with that feeling without any alcohol every single day, and not missing it, and appreciating your new life. And I think that is the case with a lot of people. So yeah, I'm super glad that you did that, and
Thanks,
I think your experience is the experience of many people. But the same could be said about other healthy decisions.
Sure.
There are a lot of things that people do that are harmful. People are addicted to pornography and maybe just partaking in pornography and gambling and stress and other aspects of their lives. And if they can see themselves getting past some of those things, then allow some of the benefit, particularly like you said it so well, the absence of the influence that otherwise would be lingering from you is removed, and you just don't have it. And then you can get on with the business of living better, spending more time with your puppies, with your family, with your kids, with your wife, with colleagues, with other business associates. That's when life becomes a lot more meaningful, when you don't have these other influences and distractions that were previously, such a part of your life.
Yeah, so true.
Sean, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. How can people learn more about you? Where should they go to check out your work?
Yeah. So first of all, my passion is the biological optimization of humans, and I'm on social media, which we talked about. What a great contribution social media has to get alternative content out there that you're just not going to hear. So I'm excited about your podcast. So you can get me on YouTube, you can get me on Instagram, and you can find me on X at just at dr Seanomara, just my name,
Dr. Sean O'Mara.
And then I also have a website if people are interested in my website and potentially working with me. My website is just www.drseanomara.com. And I love to work with people that want to become the best biological versions of themselves possible.
Yeah, let's all live to 150.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Well, seriously, what a gift.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Dr. Sean.
Yeah, we didn't even
Thank
crack
you for
the
watching.
service,
Yeah.
but we're going to come back to you. I can't wait to have conversation number 2 with you because this
Yeah,
is
we got to
such an
get you out to
intriguing.
Coeur d'Alene
Yeah.
in person.
We went so
Yeah,
fast.
happy to do it, Eric. And
All right, cool.
Yeah,
All right,
love you
all right.
guys.
Appreciate you,
Sean.
man. We'll
Take
talk,
care.
and I'll be calling you
Okay,
soon.
have a great day.
God
Take
bless.
care.
Hey, thanks for watching Man on a Mission. Tune in for great guests like Dr. Sean O'Mara. Check out his work at drseanomara.com, Instagram, YouTube. God bless.
I'm a man.